So, Doc, what are the differences between emotional labor, emotional intelligence, and emotional work?
Okay, so emotional labor kind of came before, and emotional labor is the act of, so I'm going to explain to you in real terms, a very formal definition, but the act of displaying a particular set of emotions in order to create a desired set of emotions in others.
Okay.
So, for example, if you're a hotel, you want people to feel that they're at home and feel that sense. If you're a spa, you want them to feel relaxed and calm and that sort of thing. And also, if you're a policeman interrogating people, you want them to feel, oh my God, I better tell the truth because, otherwise I'll be in trouble. Whatever the emotions are, that's what emotional labor is. Emotional work is pretty much the same. If you think about us in a personal sphere, you are trying to you might have a friend who's having a issue, a problem, and you might be really tired, but you might use emotional work to say, don't feel that way, think about it this way, and be soothing and calm and loving, and the various things we all do in our sphere all the time. Do you do those on the job? Absolutely. So if I'm here and a student comes in with a problem, I will do that as well. But the difference is that emotional work is deemed to be somewhat voluntary, whereas emotional labor, because there is some requirement of the job. So if you think of many job descriptions or scripted routines actually say, make eye contact, smile, say these particular things, that is an emotional labor requirement, emotional requirement. So that's often the distinction that we make between emotional labor and emotional work. And the third one, emotional intelligence. So this is the work of Goldman now, who was actually looking at individuals who succeed. I think he was looking particularly at managers. And his idea was that it wasn't necessarily the brightest managers who had the best results, but it was managers who behaved in a particular way. And that particular way was emotionally. So I don't remember all the 5 of them, but for example, one of them is self-awareness. So are you able to be aware of your own emotions? Another one would be self-regulation. Are you able to, having been aware of, oh, I'm feeling a bit anxious now because I'm worried about, what they're going to charge me to fix my car, but being aware of that, am I able to regulate? But for now, I have a class to teach and I need to go out there and represent, project confidence and calm and those kind of things. So the ability of people to be able to do to manage those 5 aspects would be, he said, would differentiate between good managers and not so good managers. So that's the difference. People often mix them up, and I would think of them like a Venn diagram, that there's clearly an overlap, but they are different constructs.
Okay. I was actually reading that there have been critiques of all 3. We've discussed in our previous video some of the critiques on the emotional labor, the effects that it would have on workers.
Yes.
And for emotional intelligence, one of the critiques was that people wonder if it really is any different, or if it really is a distinct construct. So for instance, is it any different from other kinds of intelligence? Is it an aspect of intelligence?
Yeah.
Is it that your personality traits are being measured, not really emotions? So there are lots of critiques about it.
Right. Yeah.
And you and I have talked about sometimes emotional labor and emotional work bleed into each other.
Yeah.
We were talking about being at the supermarket, being at Sovereign.
Right.
On Saturday, and the students come up to you or something like that.
So there are always going to be controversies, which is what makes it feel exciting, that the way that people look at it is going to make a difference. There's a thing that came out a few years, about 10 years old now, on aesthetic labor.
Okay.
And aesthetic labor is looking good and sounding right. And it's the same, that's the author's definition, not mine. And it's the same idea about branding. So they talk about employees are the walking billboard of the organization. And therefore, they are meant to represent it by the way that they speak. So we know in certain jobs, for example, you wouldn't be expected to speak patois.
Yes.
You wouldn't be like at the Jamaica Pegasus and say, well,
So
right, yeah.
that.
So whereas if you're at Sandals, so this is why looking good and sounding right is in the context of an organization. So if I check into the Pegasus now, I wouldn't expect someone to say Wappen, but if it's the Sandals front desk or any resort front desk, that might be totally appropriate because they come into Jamaica, they come to Wappen culture, and all of that. So it's in that context. And then looking good also is about, do you represent the brand well? So if you think about a gym, we would normally want to go to a gym where the instructors are buff and fit, right? But of course, you see the dark side of it. Does this now mean we're hiring people based on skin color, racial whatever, body size? So it becomes a bit controversial. Why I mentioned it, however,
we have had, because remember we had some issues with the models.
Yes.
The Jamaican fashion
yes,
models.
absolutely.
We've had some of the girls complain about, well, people think that the girls are fat.
Yes.
I'm looking on and I don't see that. But
well, you see, the thing about it is that so it's very subjective.
Yes.
But why I mention it is because the different some people say, look here, aesthetic labor is really just an aspect of emotional labor. Because emotional labor speaks to branding the individual. So the Singapore girl is the one who is the depiction of Singapore Airlines, as is, I can say a Virgin Airlines crew. They're like a machine created them because they all pretty much look the same. So why would you now say aesthetic labor is different? Because it's all in keeping with a particular brand. So there are always going to be controversies about the exact boundaries around the area. But to my mind, the biggest thing is to understand them and what are the implications for HR managers, what are the implications for employees, and so on.
And just quickly, those implications in case other people haven't seen the other video.
Well, I think the implications speak to, let's stick for a moment with the whole idea of discrimination, which is a big thing for us. So emotional labor, as I've said, is about creating a particular set of emotions in individuals. There was a time when people looking like me and you could not work in a Jamaican bank because we would create the wrong kind of emotions, because people would feel, well, I'm not so sure I want to do business with somebody like this, right? So that create a line. What about when we're discriminating on the basis of weight? They're discriminating on the basis of how you sound. So it might be exactly. And we have seen that happen in our area a lot. What is an appropriate hairstyle? So we have the bumpy head girl thing a few years ago. Disney said that for their theme parks, it's all about family goodness and so on. So they want people to feel safe in there. So they said that their average employee would be an all-American boy or girl, which sounds nice. Except then it turned out to have some racial connotation because certainly tattoos, were banned, piercings were banned, dreadlocks, oh my goodness, need not apply. So they actually had to kind of shift that. So that's one of the things that we have to think about when we're trying to brand ourselves. What does that infringe on individuals' rights? When we think about the actual management of it, recognizing that in some areas the requirement to do emotional labor for extended periods of time, is that even reasonable? So there's this wonderful anecdote that Hochschild has in her book where she talks about a flight attendant who the passenger says to her, why aren't you smiling? And she says, you smile first. And he smiles. And then she says, now hold that for 15 hours.
Ah.
And you get the point very clearly. Yeah, it's okay, but I have to do this all the time, and I physically cannot. My dissertation research was actually on entertainment coordinators in all-inclusives.
Yes, and we're going to talk about
You're going to talk about that, so I'll hold that for another interview. Yes, but but they had to work very extensive hours. So is it reasonable for us to do that? When sometimes nurses like to double up their shifts because that means that maybe I think of some friends I have in the US who might work they concentrate everything in 3 days.
Yes.
So they have 4 days at home with their family. And I actually find that a little bit alarming because this is caring work. Yes. And I'm sure day one you're good. Exactly. Hour 20, do you really care? So this is why we'll read some of the stuff about people being brought into a ICU unit, and everybody's on caring because they may be on hour 20 and they're not reacting emotionally the way that they would at hour 2. But to you, this is your relative who needs, they're having an asthma attack and they need a lot of attention, but nobody really cares that much. So we have to be very aware that this thing wears on us. Nobody would expect somebody to physically do something for more than an extended period of time, because you say, well, they're tired of walking, they cannot stand so long, they cannot lift this thing for so long. But we don't think about the emotional toll on people at all.
Yes, and I'm also thinking that there are waves. So for instance, you're friendly to students,
yes,
but if there's a line of 20
yes,
out there, even if it's 20 within an hour, because if you had 20 students over 20 hours, it's a different thing from having 20 students in 1 hour.
Absolutely.
You begin to become short, and then the phone rings, and you begin to change.
I'm actually thinking of an example when, unfortunately, I had a particular group for this class I taught, and some of them didn't do so well, quite a few. So, we have this go-through process where they can come and sit with you, and you say, well, okay, the answer I was looking for question 1 was this, and this is what you wrote. But because I didn't expect all of them to show up, and they all did in the same afternoon. So you are right. So number 1, 2, and 3 got this meticulous. By the time I got to number 6, I was like, okay, so here's a paper with what I was looking for. Here's what you wrote. Ask me if you haven't. I wasn't that abrupt, but it was really hard for me to. And this is where the emotional intelligence comes in. The self-awareness. Okay, you don't want to treat number 6 any less than you treated number 1, because they're all here for the same thing. But what that meant was that the toll on me as an individual to present in the same way, it didn't come as naturally, so I had to really be kind of forcing it. So yes. I can fully identify.
I love it. Okay, so I think that covers those definitions quite nicely.
Very well.
Thanks, Doc.
You're welcome.